Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I am joined by Kevin Graham to discuss yesterday's game, and we asked the question, does Killie stalemate offer redemption for Lee Griffiths? Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hey there, Paul. Thanks for having us again.
It's always a pleasure. You were here yesterday talking about the Rugby Park draw. There's obviously been a lot of chat since then. The big question we're asking, Kevin, is the question of Lee Griffiths. When you looked at that performance yesterday, at any point during the game, did it cross your mind that had we had Lee on the bench, he might have been the guy to inject a wee bit of spark into that performance?
Of course it did, because we were struggling, especially up top, and there was a lot of long, aimless, hopeful balls getting fired up there. And somebody made the point, I think it was yourself, Paul, about the game last season against Hamilton, the 2-1 game, and Griffiths came on and made himself a nuisance. And we were missing something like that, but we're also missing somebody just to have that wee bit of magic. And you needed somebody on that park who could have generated that little bit of magic, and Griffiths can do that. And we had guys like Cham as well. Eddie can actually produce that bit of magic. We're not 100% sure about Kamala yet, but having another player on that pitch who could produce something out of the ordinary and just make the point into 3 points would have been really, really helpful to come onto the pitch.
You're absolutely right. I mean, you're talking about a wee bit of magic at Rugby Park, and you think back to Tommy Rogic, someone who we spoke about in some depth yesterday, Kevin. You also think about Nakamura, Samaras, Di Canio. We've seen it. Sometimes it needs that bit of individual brilliance just to turn that game on its head. That's what we were looking for yesterday.
Definitely, and the longer the game went on, the more and more you were either looking for a bit of magic or for it to come for a set play. But we didn't create that many corners. The week before against Hamilton, how many chances did Big Julian have from corner kicks? And yesterday he didn't really get that opportunity. Mm-hmm. We didn't get that opportunity because we never created nothing. We never created. For the amount of possession that we had to create more. And at the end of the day, we maybe have to have a look at it. At not one point did we really think that we were going to lose the game. We never looked like losing that game, but we didn't look like winning it either. And this is where Griffiths could have made a difference. The reason that we're asking that question is, for me anyway, was Neil Lennon's comments after the game.
Yes.
Where he says he didn't see it as a big deal and it'll be sorted out. He sort of panned it off as an HR issue. Rather than a football issue. So I'm wondering if Griffiths might come back into the fold for the game against St Mirren now, especially on the bench.
Well, that's interesting. We will discuss our thoughts about the game on Wednesday. So Lee Griffiths, when you listen to what Neil Lennon said yesterday, he's played it down. I think that's something that we fully support in relation to keep it in-house, Kevin. He might be very annoyed at Lee, but keep it in-house. And if you're going to give him a rollicking, do that behind closed doors. And obviously Neil Lennon has taken that decision. Do you think the calf strain was, as we maybe suggested yesterday, just a way of getting Lee out of the picture for that particular game?
It certainly looks that way. It's the same with the he's not fit enough, the pre-season comments. I mean, everybody thought he was done after those comments by Neil Lennon. Mm-hmm. Neil Lennon came out publicly and slaughtered him. Then you got a decent half hour against Hibs from him. Then the next thing you know, this story's about to blow about him throwing the party for his girlfriend, and he has a calf strain.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, we do love Lee Griffiths to bits. I think when you draw at Rugby Park and there's a lack of creativity, it makes you kind of think about Lee Griffiths as being the guy who would be the messiah that day. It's not a case, Kevin, of a player becoming a better player because they're not in the team. I mean, the example you used there, the Hamilton example of last season, was a perfect example. That's what Lee Griffiths can do. He can turn a game on its head. You know, and sometimes it's the anger and the frustration within that makes him play like that because he feels like he's got something to prove. We will talk about the St Mirren game, but let's have a wee look at some of the comments that are coming in. We are streaming live on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter, and we do welcome as many comments and interaction as possible, so keep them coming in. Thanks for all your comments from Facebook. The question has been answered by saying no, a player has to earn the right to play by hard work, doing as asked by the manager and not letting his teammates down. Do you think he has let his teammates down?
Of course he has, but there's a dressing room dynamic here, and I mentioned this yesterday. There has to be a tolerance level up to a certain point, and if he eventually steps over that line and it starts to disrupt the harmony in the dressing room, then the manager's got to react on it. But the manager will be taking counsel of Scott Brown, the Callum McGregors, the leaders in that dressing room, and if they feel that Lee Griffiths has got something to offer and they want him back into the fold, then the management will listen to that.
I think so. You're talking about leaders, and what I would like to discuss at some stage, Kevin, is some of the comments made by Chris Commons in relation to our centre-half partnership. We'll come back to that though, and we'll only give him the kind of time of day due to the fact that he was a player previously, but he did make some comments today. We've spoken about people in the media who at some stage had a connection with Celtic, and I think Chris Commons is rapidly adding himself to that list. Let's have a look at some of the other comments being made. Steve Martin disagrees with our last comment and states that regards Griff, I personally feel he always has a goal in him, and if he was mentally, physically fit, then he would be in the squad all day long. I fear it's maybe the beginning of the end. Now, you've suggested, Kevin, that perhaps come Wednesday night, Griffiths will be back in that squad. Do you think he'll be on the bench, or do you think there'll be a change in formation?
If he's back in the squad, then he will be on the bench. My thoughts are that I don't see Neil throwing many players under the bus for yesterday's performance, and he'll go again with what he sees as his strongest 11, which we've got to accept was Neil sees his starting 11 as the 11 that have started the last two games. You only have to look at the pre-season games as well of what he called his first team. So Griffiths, if he comes back into the fold, will be on the bench, but imagine having somebody like Lee Griffiths to come off the bench, a reliable Lee Griffiths, and this is where the problem is. We need a reliable Lee Griffiths, one who's completely on board with the club, and we kind of need the Lee Griffiths who can be the bit of the maverick and be his own man. Which might have happened over the pre-season as well with regards to training and stuff like that. I mean, we don't really know. Did he do what Celtic asked him? Was he training when he looked fit to me? But then
I know, and this is a big thing, fit to you and I, against the sports science and everything that's involved with the Celtic setup. You know, this is the thing. But you know, the comment has also been made that Mavericks, Kevin, they're actually much missed in the modern game. Mavericks, you don't see very many of them because they are so preened and they're athletic. And the last Maverick we had probably was Paddy McCourt, and we've got another one in Lee Griffiths. There's no doubt about it. And through the history of the club, we've had Mavericks. Wee Jinky was a Maverick, Dixie Deans was a Maverick, and Jock Stein had to manage them a very specific way, which actually was probably a different style of management than managing, let's say, Bobby Murdoch or John Clark. And I think Alex Ferguson has spoken about that as well, the big example being Eric Cantona. The way that he managed Cantona was different from the way he would manage Dennis Irwin. And I love a Maverick. We love cult footballers. Lee Griffiths is that. The first consideration, is he okay on a mental level? And if he is, everything else can work itself out. If we can get him back in that squad, right, and he's mentally capable of playing for Celtic, get him back in, because he offers something that we were crying out for against Kilmarnock yesterday.
Definitely, and this is what I'm saying about him being on board. He has to be fully committed to what the management are telling him. And he seems to have these wee slips every now and again where he maybe gets a bit comfortable in himself, and he needs that kick, he needs that reminder that he is in a privileged position, and a privileged position that there's hundreds of people out there, thousands, who would want to be in his position. Now, he's 30 in a couple of weeks. His career is now getting into what you would call the twilight of his career. Maybe his best years are behind him. I mean, because what do they say, football players peak at 27, 26, 27. So Griffiths has got to have a look at himself. He's maybe only got 2-3 seasons left at the top level.
I think you've got to look at Anthony Stokes. We used the example yesterday, Kevin. Anthony Stokes was a gifted footballer. He was a goal scorer. And for Celtic, he was an excellent player for Celtic. But it was off the field activities that has curtailed his career. I mean, he's without a club. The last team I heard was interested in Tony Stokes was East Kilbride. No disrespect to East Kilbride. Anthony Stokes should be playing on a much higher level than that. After his Hibs fiasco, when he fell out of favour with Neil Lennon, ironically enough, that boy's career has just fallen off the edge of a cliff.
Football players talk, football managers talk, coaches talk, chairmen talk. So if somebody is seen as a bad egg, and they have done, with Tony Stokes, there's numerous evidence based that he was a bad egg over a period of 10 years. It wasn't just one incident. There's a story about him missing the bus at Sunderland, him and Liam Muller turning up late. There's stories about him at Falkirk. There's stories about him at Hibs, stories about him at Celtic. So he's always had that sort of reputation. Mm-hmm. And as you say, Tony Stokes would probably still be doing a job in the Premier League.
Absolutely.
If a manager would take a chance on him. But there is always going to be managers out there that will offer an olive branch of redemption. And Neil Lennon wasn't a saint when he was a player. He used to have run-ins with Martin O'Neill all the time. There is a story in Neil Lennon's autobiography where he speaks about going in to see Martin O'Neill, and Martin O'Neill's got the local Leicester paper, and he throws it on the table and goes, "What are you doing in that nightclub?" Like trouble in nightclubs. And so Neil Lennon wasn't a saint as a player as well, and he understands the pressures and the temptations of young footballers. And he needs to manage that. And it's interesting that he says about Jock Stein, Alex Ferguson, football hasn't changed. The management of football hasn't changed in 60 years since Stein was about. The money's changed. The way that you need to deal with players has changed, but the characteristics haven't changed.
No, you're absolutely right. Let's work our way through some more questions, but before I do so, I'm going to ask you the question: does the Killie stalemate offer a redemption for Griffiths, yes or no?
Yes.
And you expect to see him on the bench on Wednesday night, Kevin?
If the HR issue is sorted out, yes.
You're right. Steve Martin, the centre-half problem is the bigger issue we need to cover fast. Now, this takes us back to what we were saying before. Chris Commons made some comments in relation to the centre-half partnership of Julien and Ayer. Now, Julien did not have his best half.
Nope.
There was a couple of occasions where he's given away the penalty and then he almost gave the boy a free run as well. Everybody is relating that performance to the performances against Lyndon Dykes last season of Livingston, particularly on the plastic pitch. Is it a massive concern or just a bad day at the office for Julien?
For me, it's a bad day at the office. It was worse in the 2 games against Livingston last year. If you look at the game in a whole, and I know he gave away the penalty kick, and that was a big turning point in the game. But you look overall, there wasn't many chances created by the big fella that he seemingly was ragdolled by. You had a dodgy 20 minutes with him. Then in the second half, him and Ayer weren't troubled whatsoever.
So you're now looking at a situation where that performance against Livy last season, he was spooked and his composure was all over the place. You reckon after the 20 minutes he composed himself and came on to a game?
I wouldn't say he came onto a game, because I don't think any of the Celtic players came onto a game, but he wasn't necessarily troubled the same way that he was troubled last season at Livingston. For me, he got spooked with him claiming for the ball being out the park. That done something to his mindset in the 30 seconds, the 10 seconds after that. And
who challenged the boy on the sideline? Was it Frimpong? And he's standing pointing that it's a throw-in.
It was
Meanwhile,
then it was pointing. It was a.
But Frimpong, where's he in this equation? Mm-hmm. So we've got to look at the defensive frailties that we've got. That's come down Frimpong's right hand side. Centre half, we can see it. We can see that we need a replacement, or we need strengthening at centre half. And if you buy someone like, and we mentioned Filip Benkovic, and people might think that, it's quite predictable for us to mention him. We know how he plays. We know the mould of the boy. He's played here. He's played in the Scottish game. We know he can do that. If you bring him back into the three, Kevin, then it also gives us a much stronger back three should we change the formation, which undoubtedly we will going forward.
Definitely, but then it's going to be extremely difficult to sell the club to a player by saying to him that you're a third choice centre half, which any centre half that we're looking at, unless they're above the level of Ayer and Julian, which is going to be really, really difficult to attract to Scottish football, you're going to get another centre half that's work in progress to be the third choice centre half. Or somebody that's coming towards the end of their career who's quite willing to sit there as a backup.
Do you ever think that is the situation with a professional though? Barkas coming in, it's up to him to be the number one. So you can never come in and say, you're going to be the third choice. If you're signing for a club, let's say £7, £8, £9 million, it's up to you to make yourself the first choice.
Definitely, but for me, and a lot of these deals, Barkas been the perfect example. You pay £5 million for a goalkeeper, he's going to play in the Scottish game. Mm-hmm. If we sign £5 million for a centre forward, he's going to play because it's big money.
Yeah.
So if we pay big money for a centre half, then the chances are, how frugal are we? How frugal as a club are we? Do you think the money men at our club, Peter Wall and such, would sanction £5 million, £6 million, £7 million for a centre half to be third choice? It wouldn't happen.
No, they would need to play, and it's that was the argument when we were talking about the potential of having Barkas starting the game. It was all about the money we'd shelled out for him. He's going to start sooner or later, so maybe it was just a case of bedding him in at training, letting him get to know the two centre halves.
There's fabled lists, Paul, and we'll have a list of centre halves, and at the top of that list will be a centre half if we lose Christopher Ayer.
Mm-hmm.
Then if we don't lose Christopher Ayer, we don't lose any centre half, we're looking for cover, we're maybe at 3 or 4 on that list. So they're not going to be as good as the first choice, but they're still going to be decent enough. But they're going to be of a level of financial investment where it suits them being a squad player.
The thing is, we're looking at Barkas, and that's a huge investment for a goalkeeper. The biggest investment Celtic have ever made in a goalkeeper. I think Celtic are going to play the loan market. We're going to play the loan market when it comes to the centre half and the striker. And that's why we're interested in Fletcher, because he wasn't going to give us a transfer fee. We're going to bring in loan players for centre half and up front. But I think one other position that is abundantly clear needs strengthened is the wide areas as well.
Definitely. With Mikey Johnson being injured for another 6 weeks, we've got a lack of options there. But then yesterday we tried to change the formation, and we might try to do that again, because when we changed to the 3-5-2, that takes me back. When we changed to the 3-5-2, Neil Lennon did actually say the reason he went to that formation was because in December, when we went through that poor spell in December, we weren't getting the players wide enough. Mm-hmm. So that was the reason for what he had available. He went to the 3-5-2, and when you do actually think about it, that hasn't changed since he made that switch in January. So it could be that he's looking at wide men, but then we've had Swed, who just doesn't seem to be...
He's nowhere
to be seen. It's difficult. I mean, we've spoke about Paddy Roberts and that, but there'll be other wingers out there. Again, that could be another delve into the loan market.
It could well be.
I think we've been linked with somebody for Chelsea who is that type of wide forward type player. So I'm going to agree with you. If we're looking for a centre half and another forward and another wide player, it wouldn't surprise me if they're try before you buy.
Definitely. Now, a message has come in from Lindsay Dykes. I don't know if there's any relation to Lyndon Dykes here, who's saying that you've got a wee hair out of place here, Kevin. So you're going to have to watch that. And the questions and the comments keep coming in. Keep sending them through YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. Danny, via Periscope, is stating that we needed more aggression in our play. The players know what this season is about and need to man up. I felt that it was one of these games, Kevin, that, we really do have to give credit for Kilmarnock. They were so well shaped, and it got to the point where they became comfortable defending us. They had our number. They took out the two wide boys in Frimpong and Taylor by sheer brute force, right? They shortened the pitch, they nullified that threat, and then every time Edouard, who was up there on his own, got the ball, there was 4 Kilmarnock players round him. So I think they played a blinder. I thought Dyer was brilliant yesterday.
You have to give the credit to Kilmarnock, and they've put out the template how to play against us. And any team watching that, when we go to their patch, then they know how to play against us now, and it's up to us to overcome that. When the ball was breaking, when you're forcing the wide players inside and the ball was breaking, they were winning every second ball. Every loose ball, their midfield three were first there. Mm-hmm. We were nowhere in that. And it's up to us. That's maybe a type of aggression that we don't have apart from Scott Brown. We've got players who have got the type of aggression. It's a press. They're aggressive in the press. They're not aggressive in getting the second ball. Mm-hmm. They're great at reading the game. The type of players where they don't need to tackle because they know where the ball's going to break. But when it gets into that itty-bitty, a game that lacks a bit of finesse, sometimes we do lack that another Brown in there to actually put a dig in and win those second balls. But then I would rather out-football a team than for it to become a game of second balls.
Well, that's what we had to do, and I think Neil Lennon took that on the chin. That was our prerogative yesterday. We were up against that wall and we had to breach it, and it was as simple as that. But that's our responsibility. It's a difficult game to play, but how many games do we play like that? I mean, Hamilton set up like that as well, but we were able to break them down. So maybe with a wider pitch, Kevin, because obviously the wide men were so pivotal against Hamilton.
Then as well with Hamilton as well, you're relying sometimes on you're relying on forcing the opposition into making mistakes. Mm-hmm. And if you're not moving the ball quick enough, or if one of your better players is not dragging somebody out of position and taking them out the game with a bit of skill, a bit of individuality, a bit of magic, then it becomes all very, very pedestrian and easy to defend against. And this is where we need to move the ball far quicker. But purposefully quicker, not just the long aimless balls which we ended up doing for the last 20 odd minutes yesterday.
We did. Gary Doonan, thank you very much for joining us again, Gary, via Facebook. And he's mentioning that we had a few hard ones in the past at Killie, even with stars like Henrik Naka, Robbie Keane. Remember his hat-trick performance at Rugby Park in the team. It's only one game, guys. I totally agree with you. I'm not getting too excited about the 1-1. And like you said yesterday, Kevin, after doing the match day, we did a podcast, and you can catch both of them on YouTube and all the other channels, Spreaker, iTunes, etc. I didn't look at my Twitter after that. I didn't look at my social media because I'd already analysed the game so much and in so much depth yesterday. I had seen it for what it was, and we just move on to Wednesday night now. With regards to some of the comments made by Chris Commons today, what's your thoughts on Commons joining that not illustrious club of ex-Celts who are quite keen to stick the boot in?
They appeared in a certain paper, which shows a complete disregard and respect for football fans, and it's always done
for humanity.
For working class areas as well. It's obviously ghost written. Is it his opinion? It's a clickbait opinion to get people to have a look at their website.
And get guys like you and I to discuss it.
And get guys like me and you to discuss it. Does it bear scrutiny when you look at it? Well, obviously, if he's gone past the last 20 years, obviously Julian and Christopher Ayer are not Virgil van Dijk, are not Bobo Baldy, are not Johan Myalby. That goes without saying. There's no any centre halves in the world are Virgil van Dijk. If Commons is talking about a team that he played in, Jason Denayer as well. There's no many who's playing for Leon now. But out of all those centre halves, he's talking about Christopher Ayer. Christopher Ayer's going to move for a lot of money.
Yes, he is.
And there's a lot of scouts out there looking at Christopher Ayer. So for him to come away with that sort of throwaway comment is just sensationalist nonsense.
It is, and you're talking about the teams that he played in. Does he mention the team that he played in against Malta when he threw the toys at the pram? My respect levels for Collins disappeared that night. So the comments he's making in the paper, he's just, playing the game. He's playing the game of a pundit in Scottish football. And to be quite honest with you, what he's saying bears absolutely no resemblance to fact. And he is just saying it so that guys like you and I will discuss it. So let's stop discussing him and move on.
Definitely.
We've got Jamie Mack 62 who is commenting on Periscope, and he says, "We Lee can't be relied on, PJ, 2 strikers required." Well, I think we will see the arrival of at least one, and I think from the names mentioned, Kevin, Ajeti seems to be the big name, if you like, or the high profile striker. He's a guy who scored a lot of goals for Basel. He looked like a sensational signing at the time for West Ham. It hasn't worked out. I've likened his move to English football as being very similar to El Yunusi. And other than yesterday, I think El Yunusi's shown that the guy's quality. I think if we bring in Ajeti on a loan deal, he is the answer to the striker issues. I still want Griffiths to be pushing for a place though.
Definitely, and you mentioned Ajeti. That's the market we're in. We're looking at these smaller leagues in Europe, and before the players have had 6 months, a year of being absolutely fantastic in that league, before they played 50 or 60 games, then we have to get them. Because as soon as they play 50 or 60 games and they've been really, really successful, they're off to a bigger league and they're out of our price range. I mean, we looked at both Mo and Ajeti when they were at Basel. The 2 transfer fees are out of what we would like to pay. Obviously we paid 9 million for Eddie, but I'm unsure if that 9 million's up front or there's probably loads of add-ons in that. But Ajeti's went to England and it hasn't worked. You see so many players go to England and it doesn't work because the English league has got that much money. Players can be put in the bin very, very quickly and they move on. So Celtic have to rake the recycling bins to see players who they've identified with talent, with developmental opportunities, and are still young enough that meet our criteria. And it looks like the Ajeti meets that. And I haven't seen much of him, I must admit, but he seems to be the rumour that won't go away.
Well, let's hope he doesn't go away and he comes up and signs it, even on a loan deal at the moment. Kevin, we need reinforcements. That much is pretty clear. Jamie Devlin, hail, and a hail back to you. Jamie, keep the comments coming in. Gary Doonan had some real hard games during the treble years. Yeah, we have. We've had some really tough games down at Rugby Park. I mean, when was the last time we went there and won 3-0, for example, and had it's been a while since we had a game at Rugby Park that we've won convincingly. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys.
I remember going to Rugby Park under Tommy Burns and the big goalkeeper, Dragan Lekovic. How many times did he stop us winning down there? It used to be a stadium that we couldn't seem to win it. Even Martin O'Neill struggled. The last one was probably Lenny's first title when we won 6-0. That's probably the most comfortable one I can remember.
8 years ago?
8 years ago.
Colin Watt, who was on the show yesterday, it's a long message, Colin, but thank you for getting involved. Good to see Kevin's tan is wearing off. Seriously though, Griffiths has to show he wants it. Lennon could be playing it smart by not talking the player down in case there is interest in him. Well, there is obviously that. I mean, players are commodity, there is that. But I have mentioned in the past that I think Neil Lennon has managed the situation really well. Even when he gave him a rollicking in the press, it seemed to get Lee's attention. It did get a reaction, and it's unfortunate that the latest social media storm has since arisen. But I think the tan is more to do with the lighting, which we've set up to make him look a wee bit more pale, like your presenter here. Daniel McAlpine, hi guys, if Griff doesn't get it right with Celtic, would another team have him? There's always a team who would invest in a player like Lee Griffiths. I mean, you just need to think back to the season where he scored over 40 goals. I firmly believe if he was to get enough games for Celtic, he would score 25 goals, 30 goals this season. But it's all about whether or not he is going to get those games. Celtic are going to adapt their formation, Kevin. We're not going to go with one up front every week.
No.
There's going to be opportunities for playing two up front, and we've seen last season what Edouard and Griffiths could do together. I thought Griffiths brought a lot out of Edouard.
Definitely, we're not in a Brendan Rodgers situation where we were stuck to the same rigid formation and Rodgers wouldn't change it. Neil Lennon's a more horses for courses type manager. Hopefully the horses haven't got hats on. But he seems to be quite willing to change it. He's seen the coaching staff now, because Neil's already admitted that he leaves a lot of the tactics, formations and that down to Kennedy and now Gavin Stratton.
Right.
And he more handles the match day. Mm-hmm. He's more the man manager. But as you've quite rightly pointed out, there was times last season where we went 4-4-2 with a diamond in the middle. We've went 3-5-2. We have played two strikers up front. So it is in the remit. It is in the... We will and can play with two strikers. It's not as far-fetched as what it maybe was 3-4 years ago.
Spot penalty, that's the penalty spot in Sword Street in Glasgow. Kevin Tate is suggesting it seems the system can't be used until Griff returns. Paddy is really a third choice. Well, yes, I get what you're saying, Kevin. He's currently a second choice because of other reasons, but he has shown a real commitment during the pre-season. He's come back, he's looking fit, he's well conditioned. We threw him on yesterday. You kind of hoped for him that he could be the match winner, but you were up against it. Celtic haven't turned into a bad side since last week. No, we were watching them against Hamilton and we were delighted with a 5-1 victory. It's just that Kilmarnock, for me, played the game perfectly well. There's going to be situations like that throughout the season. There always is. How many games like that do you have in a season with 10 men behind the ball in the opposition's half? We get that a hell of a lot. We get it at Fir Park, Rugby Park, Hamilton, Livingston. We're going to come up against it time and time again, and it's all about that individual magic. But I do think the Celtic team needs refresh. We need to bring in a couple of new faces.
Definitely, I think every squad needs refreshed, and I think it's one thing that's in the sport. Teams get stale, especially with us, and going in this season. And there is something to go for this season, but you need to keep the players on their toes. We have got quite a settled core of players, but even they need a bit of a G up, and you'll hear them saying it in comments to the media, that they like it, they like new faces, they like the new personalities coming into the changing room, that keeps it fresh for them, it keeps it up for them. But I think this season everything is like under a microscope. We drew at Rugby Park yesterday. We've drew at Rugby Parks in other seasons, but yesterday it was a crisis, yesterday it was a disaster because of what's at stake this season. But this season is no different from any other season. There's still 38 games.
Yes.
There's still going to be bad performances. There's still going to be games where we drop points. We need to embrace this fact that there's going to be games that we may lose. It is going to happen because we're going to get all the trials and tribulations of a normal season. So, yes, we're all emotionally DEFCON 5 emotionally, but sometimes we've got to take a step back and go, there's 36 games left.
Absolutely, it's a long season, and Neil Lennon said that in his post-match interview. Something else that he said, Kevin, that struck a chord with me was that Celtic missed their fans. They missed their fans when we were going into the last 20 minutes. Obviously, we have witnessed so many late winners in the past, important goals at the death, and the fans are obviously pushing the team on. I agree with that. I think we do, but it's just yet another thing that we need to contend with, like everyone else does.
Definitely, and it was, again, Lennon says after, we can't use it as an excuse. And it was Colin, it says yesterday that, or was it David, one of the two of them actually says that where Celtic were attacking in the second half, the Celtic fans would have been in that goal. Mm-hmm. And the away support is very boisterous and noisy, and yes, they would have been urging the team.
Rambunctious,
that's a great word, that. They would have been rambunctious and getting the team attacking that goal. It might have not made. I mean, you look at the last minute winner at Rugby Park with Scott Brown a couple of years ago. The scenes of joy that took in the Celtic. That ball went out for a corner. And that stand was like urging the team on to actually get the winner. Yes, we are going to miss that on situations like yesterday, but then it can work against us. I reckon it worked against us at Copenhagen, at the game at home, when we got ourselves back into the game and the crowd were roaring the team on, and we got emotionally caught up in that rather than just seeing the game out to extra time and taking it to extra time. We tried to play a World Cup ball. We tried to play a ball that was never on.
The box office ball, the Hollywood pass, as Brian McClare described it when talking about David Beckham. And we've got loads of questions coming through. Thank you all for tuning in to our bulletin. We'll be doing this as where possible on a daily basis, and we'll be discussing and engaging with everyone who joins us on YouTube and on Facebook and Twitter. Vice Point Shudo, thanks for joining us again. Not panicking about yesterday, but as it still stands, we need a centre back and another winger. I think that is all the discussion that we've been hearing, Kevin. We're looking for a centre back, we're looking for a centre forward, and we would like someone on the wing. Now, Mikey Johnson is probably about 5 weeks from coming back. Let's not forget, Mikey Johnson had a superb start to his season last season, and obviously it kind of faded a bit through injury. But that boy's a talent, and he is an option as well out wide left.
Definitely, and I think he had the expected young boy dip. A young player breaks into the team, they go with the adrenaline, they have a few great performances, then there's a dip when that adrenaline wears off and they've got to adapt their game to competitive football. Frimpong was the same. I think he wasn't as spectacular when we came back after the winter break. He still contributed, but he wasn't as spectacular as what he was when he was an unknown quantity when he came into the team.
Absolutely.
And again with Johnson as well, I mean, when he got injured, it was sheer stupidity. When he got injured,
I think Lennon mentioned that.
Lennon quite clearly
that was
told
Rugby
him.
Park as well, wasn't it?
McDermott. Lennon quite clearly told him that as well. So Mikey Johnson is a talent, and being a Celtic fan, you love young players coming through. You want to see Mikey Johnson be successful, and I think he's got the talent to be successful. But us Celtic fans, or some Celtic fans, especially the home support, are very tough on our own.
Yeah.
For some reason. And
remember Jerry Craney?
Yes, we mentioned Jerry quite a lot on this. He definitely does need revisited, because
Jerry Craney, as a young guy, got a lot of stick. He got a lot of stick. But when you look at his goal scoring record and his goals in big games, I mean, several goals against the likes of Rangers and in Europe. And yes, I think we sold him too soon.
You wrote a book on the Quality Street gang.
Yeah, I did.
And did they get stick when they were coming through?
I think that when you speak to people like Phil Differ, and Phil is fantastic at painting a picture, but he talks about the youngsters coming through and Jock Stein getting stick and the Lions getting stick, and they all got stick. They all did. But I think it is tough when you see a young guy getting a hard time. And, on the flip side, you've got people like Kieran Tierney, who was, supported like nothing before. Callum McGregor, did he get a hard time? I think his form faded quite a bit under Ronnie Dyler. And, if he hadn't been part of the squad, no one would have argued at that time.
I don't think it's Callum McGregor did get a hard time, because he was seen as a Ronnie Dyler project.
Yeah.
And he was caught in that crossfire as being a Ronnie Dyler, the teacher's pet. I think. But Callum McGregor is the metronome of that Celtic team. I can't imagine our success without Callum McGregor. Callum McGregor is a fantastic player, and it's one of my worries that every transfer window that somebody will come in for Callum McGregor, because he could make the step up to the English Premier League no problem. Like Tierney, you look at Tierney now, after a couple of months he got injured, then now he's had the adjustment. The Arsenal fans are raving about him.
Yes.
The Arsenal fans are now seeing why I spent 45 minutes on an Arsenal podcast raving about Kieran Tierney. They're now seeing what I was on about.
Yeah. Absolutely. Mark Devlin, 93, thanks for your message via Twitter, Mark. Why was Rogic absent from the team yesterday? Could really have done with his creativity. Well, we did speak about that, didn't we? Tommy Rogic, is his time up? He would have been another good option on the bench. We really did lack creativity yesterday.
I can't remember if Lennon says he was injured or not, but again, having a look at the game, would he actually have made any difference whatsoever, the way that we were playing? He might have came up with that bit of magic, but we all wanted the change of formation when we got it. Maybe some would say we should have had it slightly earlier. The change of formation made no difference to the way that we were playing, the lack of creativity that we had. So sometimes you've just got to mark it down as a bad day.
It certainly was a bad day. Colin Watt points out, it was a shame about the result, but delighted you managed to get to watch the game in South Africa. Daniel McAlpine. Daniel was joining us for the match day Celtic State of Mind coverage. Jamie Mack, 62, CJ and KA are footballers. We need a big, strong defender at centre-half to complement them. Well, I think we had a big, strong defender in Simunovic, but for other reasons, we've let him go, and I think it was the right decision. But Benkovic, for me, would be the big, strong defender at the back.
Is there such a thing as a big, strong defender in football now? Football's game, it's almost non-physical. The best centre-halves in the game read the game. They don't need to tackle. You look at Van Dijk, and I know Van Dijk is a one-off, but you look at centre-halves all over Europe, they get bullied because the physical nature of the game is not there anymore. For me anyway, that's the way I look at it. I've seen some centre-halves, especially in European football, who go for 50, 60 million pounds. And you look at them and you go, why? It's because they make the least mistakes. They are going to make mistakes, they are going to lose goals, but the ones that make the least mistakes are the ones that go for an awful lot of money.
Well, Gary Doonan makes that point. All top centre-backs we've had have made mistakes. Paul Elliott, Mark Reaper, Johan Mjalby, and even Virgil van Dijk, absolutely. And another comment coming in via Facebook, thoughts on El Hamid as our third choice centre-half. Even then, I've got concerns. I think El Hamid's a fantastic player, and you could see it yesterday. If you were looking at man of the match for yesterday, Mings would have probably been Callum McGregor, followed by Ryan Christie, and then El Hamid. And when you consider how long he was on the pitch, it shows you how well he played. But again, I do still have concerns about his injuries, because he spent so long last season, injured. So El Hamid for me is definitely, I would say, cover for centre-half. I still want that big pivot in the middle there that is able to bring Julian and Ayer together in a three, or even push them for a first choice in a four.
You could actually say that, I did say this yesterday and I still believe this, is I believe El Hamid should be our first choice first choice right back. And a great option to move to centre back if we need to in game, go to a 3-5-2. And I understand what you're saying about his injuries. He was injury prone last season, and he seems to have been injury prone his whole career, which again, it's about reliability. We spoke about Lee Griffiths earlier on. Can you trust these players to be available for 30, 40 games a season? And we need them to be available for 30, 40 games a season.
Daniel McAlpine, hi Colin, it was just great to see Celtic play in a league game. Never has this happened in South Africa. I need to wait for Champions League, but now ESPN is in South Africa. I see the next game also. Well, good on you, Daniel. I hope you enjoy it, and you can join us again on Wednesday night for our match day coverage when we will be covering the St Mirren game. If you are interested in any sponsorship opportunities for a Celtic State of Mind's match day or the bulletins, then please get in touch, DM me, find me on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. You probably are already on those pages if you're looking at this stream. We can talk about some sponsorship opportunities. Facebook user is telling us that yesterday proved that we still need investment in the team. It's our biggest season, and if we don't win the league, the blame stops at the board. Kevin, if I was to ask you to give me your wish list of a centre half, a wide player and a centre forward, who's on it?
I don't think like that. The reason being is football fans now see as major cash investment as the cure for all ills. The team that we had on that park yesterday was more than good enough to beat Kilmarnock. It's more than good enough to beat anybody else in Scotland. We just had a bad day at the office. And throwing money, you recently had John Barnes. We gave John Barnes a lot of money for a centre-half and it didn't work out very well. So throwing money at it is not... It's not a panacea. It's not a cure. It doesn't guarantee success. What I would say, if we're going to sign anybody, they've got to improve the squad.
Yes.
And if we're going to sign anybody, we've got to put the dial up to 10. We've got to put the dial up, and they've got to improve on what we've already got there in the first team. That's
where the loan market at this moment in time, Kevin, is going to benefit Celtic. Otherwise, you're spending between £7 and £10 million on 3 players.
On 3 players, correct. So if we have to go into that loan market, that's fine. I know some people don't want to go into that loan market, but that's the way modern football is. You've got elite clubs who have got squads of players that are never going to play, that are out of price range, but we can get them in for a season. And if the player likes it up here, they may come back. How many times did Fraser Foster come here? 4 times?
4 times, Kevin.
4 times he came. You had Denier as well. I
was a big fan of Denier, I really was.
You look at the Man City connection that we do have, and I mean, what people sometimes forget is Beaton and Wanyama were on trial at Man United, Man City also. And that's where they were flagged up to us. They never made it in Man City. They never got signed with Manchester City. But they were flagged up to us by Man City. So we could go back down that route to the elite clubs. We've used Chelsea before. We've used Man City before. And that is a way of getting better quality players into the squad.
Just don't mention Charlie Musonda. We'll run through some more comments. Thank you for commenting on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. And Lawrence Connolly, how are you doing, Lawrence? It can be used Sved until we sell him. Well, Sved's a wide player. I don't think, in relation to the comments made by Neil Lennon, that he's ever been ready in terms of his condition, his fitness. He's never been ready for the first team. I think he's not even in the first 19.
No,
we won't see him again, will we?
No, I don't think he's even in the matchday squad. I think Lennon and the coaching staff have made up their mind on Swede, and is it a shame? Who knows? We'll just need to wait and see how his career pans out, but his career's not going to pan out at Celtic anyway. It was the same, somebody mentioned Arzani as a failure. And I'm going, well, the guy was injured for the majority of his time at Celtic, and he was only here on loan. So how can you class him as a failure? We got him on loan from Manchester City, and he was injured for the 18 months he was here. So was that a failure, or was it just bad luck? We don't know. We need to see how his career pans out as well.
We do, because he looked like a promising player. He really did. Sean Ross, backup striker, a centre-half, left-sided midfielder. So that, we've got time for one more comment or question. My wish list would be Benkovic, Paddy Roberts and Ajeti. Now, if it means we bring the 3 of them in on loan, I'm happy with that. That would strengthen our squad, absolutely, without a doubt. It's not a panic after yesterday. I've been saying it all season. That's where I would like to strengthen the Celtic squad. Final comment goes to the Celtic Ray. Poor spell in December, 7 wins, 2 defeats, 1 on a dead rubber versus Cluj. 7 wins, 2 defeats. The one, again, is when you get beaten against Rangers, for example, in December, it might paint the picture of disappointment.
What I was actually talking about, he's quite right, the results don't match up, but it was the performances. We went stale in December, we looked leggy in December, and I know for a fact, having spoke to some of the coaching staff, that the reason they put down for that was they weren't getting the players wide enough. So even though we had 7 wins, the coaching staff weren't happy with the performances in December, and that's where the change to the 3-5-2 came about.
So you're taking that one, Kevin?
I'm taking that one,
Our 30-minute bulletin has run on to 50 minutes. We could stay for even longer. Thank you all for getting involved. This is a daily occurrence on a Celtic State of Mind. So please keep the comments coming in. Join us tomorrow again for a bulletin, and then on Wednesday night from 5:30 for our match day coverage against St Mirren. All that's left for me to say is, Kevin Graham, thank you for joining me on a Celtic State of Mind.
Thank you very much.